Hello everybody and welcome to the MerwinMusic YouTube channel. In this video I'm going to show you how to cover these MDF speakers in wood veneer. Okay, so I think the most important step of this whole project is going to be the prep work. I think it's good to pretend that you are just going to paint the cabinet, and that way anything you think would show through just one coat of paint will probably show through when we're all done with the wood veneer. That means we need to sand down and even out all these seams in the MDF, and we need to fill in any gaps or cracks or these screw holes in the speaker. So in order to do that, you kind of have two options, either a wood filler or Bondo. I'm going to go with Bondo in this case because it should shrink less, which means I can get away with just hopefully one coat to fill in all these holes, and it should dry faster, which means I can move on to sanding a little bit quicker. Now, in order to mix up this Bondo, I'm going to do it on this old piece of countertop here, and I'm going to use this 1.5-inch putty knife, which should be plenty big in order to fill in just these little holes. So I'm going to mix up a batch of Bondo and then fill in the holes with my putty knife. I'm going to try and scrape as much Bondo off as I can, which will help save me some work when it comes time to sand. And as soon as I'm done, I like to take a razor blade and clean off the putty knife and the countertop, since it will be really difficult to do so once the Bondo fully sets. Okay, so now that we've filled in all the holes and cracks in our speaker cabinet and the Bondo has had time to dry, we're going to go ahead and sand the whole cabinet smooth. I'm going to use an orbital sander for this, and I'm going to work my way through 80, 120, and 220 grit sandpaper. Oh, we look good. Okay, so after you're done with the sanding, if your holes look like this, then that's great and you are done. Similarly, all your joints should be nice and even and line up perfectly. Okay, so now that all of the prep work is done for our speaker and it's all filled in and sanded smooth, it's time to actually begin the veneering process. Now, I picked up this 2-foot by 8-foot sheet of walnut veneer from my local hardwood dealer. And the first thing I made sure to do was to take it out of its little roll and lay it flat with some boards on each end, at least overnight. This helps the veneer lay flat and it helps it not curl up on you so much, and it's a lot easier to work with. The next thing I did was make a little diagram to see how I was going to cut out all of the pieces of my speaker out of this piece of veneer. I want to make sure that I get the side, top, and side to be one long stripe, so I get the grain pattern going up and over the whole speaker cabinet. And then I made sure to find enough space to get my front and back and bottom panels out of that. So with that plan in mind, I'm going to just lay down the speaker straight away on top of the veneer. Then with a sharp new blade in my utility knife, I'm going to trace out each side of the speaker cabinet using the side of the knife as a guide, so I can cut each piece a little bit oversized so I have a little wiggle room when I'm trying to line up the piece on the speaker later. While I'm cutting these pieces out, I'm labeling them with a piece of blue painter's tape and a Sharpie, just so I know what piece it is and what orientation it should go on the speaker to keep things the way I want them. Okay, so we got all our pieces cut and labeled, and it's time to finally start gluing some veneer. So for this, I'm going to use some contact cement, and I'm going to apply it with a 4-inch foam roller. Now, it's a good idea to make sure that you plan out the order that you're going to apply the veneer panels. So I recommend starting with the bottom and then the back, and then the sides, front, and lastly the top. Now if this is your first time, that'll give you a chance to kind of practice on the bottom and back. That will not be seen, but it has the added benefit of hiding the edges of the veneer in the best way possible. So that means the top will go on last, and it'll hide the sides of our veneer from our front and sides. Now I already went ahead and started with the bottom and back of the speaker panel, but all the sides go on the same. So I'm going to show you on this side panel that's the biggest and the hardest to get right. Okay, so I've opened up my contact cement and I've already stirred it, and I'm just going to do the lazy method here and dip my foam roller right in there and then apply a nice even coat to the entire speaker cabinet, making sure I get everything nice and wet and I get all the way to every edge. Okay, so I've covered my veneer and my speaker cabinet, and as soon as I'm done with that, I'm going to put my roller in a plastic bag, I'm going to put the lid back on this contact cement so it doesn't dry out. And now I'm going to wait for this to dry. Okay, so we're back after a couple minutes and it's feeling like this glue is pretty dry. A good way to check is just to tap it with your fingers. And if it's tacky at all or your fingers stick, then it's probably not quite dry. Another thing you can do is use the hairs on the back of your arm. And if the glue like tugs and pulls at them when you move them across, then you know it's not quite ready. But this is dry and ready to go. So we're going to open up my can again and apply a second coat. Okay, so once the second coat has dried and is no longer sticky, we're going to lay out some wooden shims, or you can use some free paint sticks. This way we can line up the veneer without it touching the speaker. The key part of contact cement is once the two surfaces make contact, they don't ever come apart. So you need to be careful not to touch them together until they are lined up in the right place. So I put the veneer down and made sure that there is a little lip overhanging every edge of the speaker. And then once I'm sure it's in the right place, I can slowly pull out the shims from the middle and push down and smooth out the veneer. And now I'm going to take this 1-inch wooden roller. You could use a bigger J roller, but I like to get more pressure on a smaller area. And I'm going to go ahead and just work my way, same thing from the middle out, pushing down more or less as hard as I can. Okay, so now that we've used our roller and pushed down this whole side, it will stay. You don't need to clamp it or worry about anything like that, though it will take a couple days to fully cure. Now I found all you need to do is take your utility knife and you can line up the blade with the edge of the speaker cabinet and then simply follow that line, cutting through the veneer, trimming it flush. You can leave it a little bit proud, and then what we can do is come back with a sanding block with some 220 sandpaper, and we'll just sand it down to make sure that that's nice and flush. Okay, so there you go. I got the speaker all done. I just did that same process on each of the sides, coating it with the contact cement, and then rollering it down, trimming the edges with the knife, and sanding it all smooth. You can tell the speaker looks pretty good. At this point, I need to just do some wood finish, so I need to sand these with some 220 grit paper by hand, and then I'm going to finish it with a boiled linseed oil and polyurethane, but you could use any wood finish you wanted to at this point. If you have any questions or tips or tricks, things you've learned in veneering your own speakers, I'd love to hear what those are in the comments down below. Otherwise, make sure to subscribe to not miss out on any of my future videos. But most of all, thank you for watching and have a wonderful day.